guys want to do the Pledge of Allegiance? Do you guys want to do the pledge?
My favorite seat.
There's plenty of space.
Until Maria gets here. Unless Maria gets here.
There's plenty of room too. We can pull up another chair. If member Leon Vasquez arrives. Please. Good evening. Welcome to the meeting of the Santa Monica Malibu Board of Education meeting. We called this meeting to order at 4:31 p.m. this afternoon. There are two things to report out from closed session. Under anticipated litigation, there was listed one case. By a vote of 5-0, the board acted to reject as non-responsive the Nazarene Group's bid on the district's bid number 18.26 ES.R1-JAMS HVAC and fire alarm project. Although TNG submitted the lowest bid on the project, TNG's bid was non-responsive because TNG's listed some subcontractor for the HVAC portion of the work, Air Design Solutions, was not a pre-qualified HVAC contractor at least 5 business days prior to bid opening as required by the Public Contract Code section 20111.6 and the district's bid documents. In addition to that, we will report out that due to an urgent timeline, the board voted 2/3, 5-0, to add special education settlement case DN 1008-18/19 to our closed session discussion, and there is no action to report out on that matter. That now brings us to roll call. Sarah, we are absent 2 members this evening. Member Leon Vasquez, although Ms. Vasquez is expected to join us shortly, and then Member De La Torre is away at a conference this evening. That brings us to the Pledge of Allegiance, and if the student board members would lead us, we would appreciate that. Thank you. That now brings us to the approval of the agenda. Is there a motion to approve the agenda? Moved by Craig, seconded by John. Thank you. All in favor of approving the agenda, say aye. And I see no objections. Thank you. Brings us to one set of minutes. Thank you, Sarah. We have minutes before us for September 20th. Are there any corrections or changes that need to be made? Seeing none, is there a motion to approve the minutes from September 20th? Moved by Craig, thank you. Seconded by Ralph. All those in favor say aye. Aye. And there are no objections. It's a unanimous decision, Sarah. It brings us now to our commendations and recognitions. And I'm going to read a statement in honor of Jake. Can someone help? I want to make sure I get this right.
Your last name is Tavilda and
this is, yes, this is a point well taken, Mr. King. Karegian, Jake Karegian, and the Citizenship Award. That is the Citizenship Award, and was bestowed upon Mike Mulligan. Tonight, we would like to congratulate Malibu High School teacher Mike Mulligan, who was awarded the City of Malibu's Jake Karegian's Citizenship Award for 2018. The award is given to outstanding individuals who demonstrate a commitment to and involvement in recreation in Malibu. Recipients give their time and resources to enhance the quality of recreation programs for the Malibu community. John, would you like to read some also, please?
stopped it
It's
where
the
you
second
started.
paragraph.
Coach Mulligan has been at Malibu High for over 25 years, serving as PE teacher, swimming coach, and water polo coach. Under his leadership and mentorship, the aquatic sports at the high school have been extremely successful. He guided the boys' water polo team to a CIF state championship in 2014 and was named the California Coaches Association Coach of the Year in 2015. He received the Dolphin Award in 2016 for his long and successful tenure at Malibu High School as a teacher and coach. The Jake Karegian Citizenship Award was established in 2002 in honor of Deputy Hagup Jake Karegian, who was killed in the line of duty in 2001 after 17 years of service with the Los Angeles County Sheriff's Department. Congratulations to Coach Mulligan.
Congratulations. Thank you, John. And we'll add that to the record of our meeting. Dr. Durati, that now brings us to our study session for the evening on student performance.
Great. So could we go ahead and pull that up? So this is the second part of our quarter one data review. We remind you that we are reviewing what we call the lag data. And just another reminder, because I'll keep talking about this here, is we have a cycle of inquiry that we follow. We first look at lag data in quarter one, and then soon to come we'll talk about quarter two, which is the lead data, quarter 2 and 3, and then eventually we'll go through the LCAP process. So at the last board meeting, we looked at one portion of the lag data, and this is a second portion. And with that said, I'll invite Dr. Mora to present the information.
Welcome, Dr. Mora.
And members of the board, Dr. Durati, cabinet, and guests. This evening, I will be highlighting the second portion of our data addressing goals 1, 2, and 3 of the Local Control Accountability Plan, which is also known just as the LCAP. As part of the report, I will also be reviewing with all of you promising practices and next steps. This follows the same format that we shared with you at our previous meeting when we reviewed the CASP data. So one of the things that I do want to go through is just what are those metrics that we are utilizing today. And the metrics are identified by goal. So you'll see that for goal 1, which addresses that all students will be socially just and ready for careers in college, include the metrics of the cohort graduation rate, graduates meeting the UC, CSU, A through G requirements, AP course enrollment, graduates passing 1 or more AP exams. And then you'll see 2 items that are highlighted in green. The highlights in green mean that we need additional time to further review the data and to unpack it and be able to present it to you. So those are the 2 metrics that are not before you under goal 1. For goal 2, which addresses English learners becoming proficient in English while having access to rigorous, culturally and linguistically responsive courses, include annual reclassification of English learners data. So looking at how many students are being reclassified as proficient. But you'll also notice that there's the annual progress in English acquisition on the LPAC assessment. That is the assessment that took place of the CELT. So since last year was the first time that we gave the LPAC, we still don't have the annual growth per the LPAC. So we don't have that annual growth to share with you. That LPAC summative data will be available for us to share with you in November, and that's something that we can bring forth to you through the Friday memo so that you have access to that data. And then the last goal that we are focusing on is goal 3, which really addresses the importance of students and families engaging in safe, well-maintained schools that are culturally responsive and conducive to 21st century learning. And I think for us, we're changing that terminology to really think about it as future learning. But because that's the language in our goal, that's what we have in place. But I know we've engaged in that dialogue. So within this, we are looking at the dropout rate, the student engagement survey, and you'll see highlighted in green as well is the suspension and expulsion rates and student attendance. Now, the reason these are not being brought forth to you today is because we are actually validating our data in our student information system and our data platform. Want to make sure that all of our numbers are accurate, so we've been engaging in just doing that validation with the platform that we are utilizing. So that will be coming to you as well through the Friday memo to just give you that information. So then we really want to begin to think about what are some of the findings that we've had in this preliminary data. Again, the state will be releasing the formal data in November, so we always want to keep in mind that all of this data is still preliminary. Things might be adjusted. So overall, we are seeing improvement in our graduation rates. So that is something that we want to be able to celebrate. We are also seeing a similar trend for AP participation rates and for demographic representation, meaning that when we look at our enrollment of students, we are seeing that our AP courses reflect the demographics of our school. So that is really exciting for us to see, because on the other hand, we're also seeing that the AP passing rate is consistently staying at an increasing level. So as we've increased the inclusivity of our AP courses, we've also seen that our students have been able to maintain that high level of learning within those courses. So that is exciting to see. I think one of the things that we also would like to celebrate is that we're not only ensuring that our students are feeling successful in our A through AP courses, but that we're also providing the supports necessary for students that have greater needs. And we've seen this through also the dropout cohort rates just decreasing overall. And that's something that you'll also see as you look at the data and we look at it through our student populations. So you're also seeing that we are decreasing the dropout rate for our students. So that's something that we want to celebrate. But although we're encouraged with the gains that we're seeing, I think it's really important that we continue to reflect on the areas of needing improvement. So we've also identified that there has been a slight decrease in graduates completing the A through G requirements. So that's something that we want to take note of, specifically for our English learners, African Americans, and students that have been identified as SED. So we want to make sure that we're looking at this and identifying how we can support our students and build these nets to provide them the guidance that they need in order to be successful. We also want to make sure that we are looking at how our participation rates have increased and how our students have also been able to meet those high expectations. However, our student populations that we are targeting, which include our Latino students, our students that have been identified as low income, our African American students, there is still an opportunity gap for them. So we're still seeing that our white students are being more successful at higher rates. So how do we begin to actually target and provide support so that that opportunity gap decreases as we continue to move forward? And something that was really interesting to take a look at that can inform our work as we think about how we can better support our students has to do with the engagement survey that our students in 6th, 8th, and 10th are a part of. What we noticed when we looked at the survey is that students identified that they were not feeling cognitively engaged as they progressed through the years. So what we mean by cognitively engaged is that they are not feeling challenged or connected with the academic tasks or activities. And specifically, there were particular areas that were identified that included the identification of creativity as something that would be something that would support them to feel more cognitively engaged. Discovering the opportunity to discover their skill sets. What are the skill sets that they have? Relevance. How do we connect what we're learning in the classroom to the outside world? And lastly, fun. How do we make our classes more fun? Which I think it's important for us to take note of because it really speaks to what we are focusing on, right? And many of the activities and many of the practices that we are embarking on as we work together to improve the experience for our students. So our students are giving us this information, and it's really validating for us to know that we are moving in the right direction. But there is still work to be done, especially because this is being highlighted. So as we think about our promising practices, something that we have been working on and we want to continue to work on is really the implementation of Naviance. And making sure that we continue to support our counselors and advisors to provide targeted support to students in order to develop career and a college plan. So how do they engage in that dialogue? How do they make those adjustments? And how do they provide that support to students that are finding themselves, are finding some challenges through their coursework? Also, the importance of making sure that we continue with an emphasis on culturally relevant content and instruction. That is evidenced through the work around social justice and the different social justice cohorts that have been taking shape, as well as the project-based learning activities and experiences that have been provided throughout our district, and that now we are more intentionally focusing in on to make sure that it's not just in isolated incidents, but also something that we can see throughout our classrooms and our district. As well, we've also been utilizing targeted outreach to our families to provide wraparound services and address barriers impacting student engagement, right? So how can we engage our families more authentically? And this is something that has been taking shape through our Student Services Department. Tara Brown, our Director of Student Services, along with Shuli, our mental health caseworker, have been really honing in on targeting families that have been, and students that have been needing additional support in order to engage them more authentically and really be proactive in providing the services necessary so that students will be able to more authentically engage in the classroom. Dr. Drati.
Perhaps I'll let you finish the last piece first, and then I'll
Of course, and then we also want to highlight that another promising practice that we have in place is the implementation of restorative justice strategies and/or responsive classroom practices. We are really excited about the work that has been taking place. We provided two sessions for our principals and our site teams in level 1 restorative justice training, and we had a huge interest, and it's been very exciting to hear and to see that those strategies are being implemented with staff, with students in the classroom, and that they are beginning to see a change in the feel of what the climate and culture within the classroom. So this is a promising practice that we have been utilizing, and now again are more intentionally and systematically looking at providing professional development to our staff, and then asking and charging our staff to go and implement and then come back and report what they're finding and what they're learning. And as a result of this, they've asked for level 2 restorative justice training, which will be coming along in the winter, January, February, so that those same teams that came in the summer for that level 1 will now be receiving level 2 training to continue the work. And that is that's exciting, because not only do we see it with staff and with classrooms, but I had an opportunity to see it as well take shape last night in an event that was organized by JAMS Middle School, by the team there, where they were sharing restorative practices with their school community, and we had families engaging in that experience to be able to have a better understanding of what is taking place at the schools that will impact the experience that their students have in the classroom, and that will then, in effect, trickle to their homes. And if they're hearing their students say, let's breathe, or let's sit and talk about what we're experiencing, then they can be a part of that whole process to be able to practice it at home. So those are some exciting and promising practices that we currently have in place. Dr. Drati.
Just to add to that, restorative justice, when the next set of trainings come, I'll send an invite to some of you. I think you really have to kind of see it in action to see what the program is about. The trainings that we had in the summertime involved parents, staff, and so many different people, and people are pretty excited about. It's just, I guess one person said, it's just good parenting. But I want to take your attention to the bullet number 1. I just want to add a little more pieces to that implementation of Naviance. I mean, you probably wouldn't remember, but you authorized for us to purchase licenses for our students to have, or all of our families to have access to Naviance starting at the 6th grade. So all of our counselors from the middle schools and high schools have been trained. They've had a series of trainings on how to implement Naviance, which is aligned to a curriculum that counselors are going to follow from 6th grade on to help engage students in planning for life, planning for all the things that you need that are in being able to be guided throughout the years as students matriculate through the system. So we don't want to just engage students with those activities in the 9th grade. We want that from 6th grade on, when, goal setting and all those things that'll be documented. What you would normally see in a counselor's cume folder that's in the counselor's desk, we want to make sure that it is if parents and students and other staff are able to kind of see it, so they can help guide students. So the counselors will be coming to do a study session around, we think we're scheduled, I believe, November. November. So you'll see the full battery of what they've been planning and how they're going to implement it.
Thank you, Dr. Drotti. So considerations for next steps. A lot of these really are things that we're starting. So it's really important that as we think about next steps, we really focus on how do we build on what is working, and how do we innovate with the current practices taking place. So again, we want to make sure that we increase and target our focus to ensure access to core curriculum for English learners, African American students, and our students that are low income. One of the things that specifically within this particular point is really thinking about how do we unpack the EL data so that we're looking at our students based on language proficiency level. Because what you'll see is that as you delve into the reclassification data, we reclassified a lot of students in the last 2 years. So now we really need to take a closer look at the EL information to see where are the proficiencies of those, what is the language proficiency level for the students that are needing support, and how do we target that type of support for them based on their language proficiency. And then also making sure that we review classroom design, our instructional design and management systems, to ensure that all of our students remain engaged, remain socially and emotionally engaged, and also cognitively engaged, as the survey data showed us. And what we want to make sure that we are doing is utilizing that information. Right, I shared with you that there were specific areas around the cognitive piece that students called out for us. So how does that data inform the design of our instructional delivery as we work with our teachers and with our different teams? And then provide additional professional development for teachers to deepen their understanding and implementation of restorative justice practices. As I shared with you, there is level 2 coming, but there's also been a call out for wanting to do a level 1. So now it's a matter of where do we find the time so that we can provide this. So we're already thinking ahead that in the summer we may be offering another level 1 to bring in more teachers to experience this practice and this way of being. I can also share with you that we've had certain specific schools that have called it out. For example, McKinley Elementary has worked directly with Rob Howard, our restorative justice consultant, and is going to actually be receiving their whole staff. The whole staff is going to be receiving the restorative justice training. Actually, 80% of the staff, because it's making sure that they're ready and willing to engage. But that is a significant number to want to engage and give their time to be able to be a part of that and bring that into their school. So that's exciting. We're seeing that is already taking shape, and it's not just coming from us, but it's coming from our teachers saying, yes, we want to do this. How can we make it happen? We also want to, as you know, develop our framework that articulates a clear vision and identifies needed supports and actionable steps to implement project-based learning program models and to strengthen our CTE pathways. The superintendent's working group is underway and has really started talking about what do we mean when we talk about project-based learning, so that we can make sure that we have a clear message that we can share with our staff, with our families, with our entire community around what is that vision and what are those steps that we're going to be taking place. I've been working really closely with Dr. Devon Smith, our coordinator for learning and innovation, and we are really excited for the professional learning opportunities that we will be able to provide that cohort of teachers. We have 14 teachers at the secondary level who will be taking part in this PBL work and beginning to engage and to help it to take shape. And that will then inform us as we continue to expand it to the middle and elementary. So a lot of very exciting things for us to consider and look forward to as we think about how do we improve and support our students in not only being career and college ready, but being ready to be citizens and think about how they can impact the world around them. So with that, I want to say thank you so much for your support and for the time. And if you have any questions or comments, I'm more than happy to answer. And I also have with us this evening our Director of Assessment, Research, and Evaluation, Mr. Sam Hakoshi, who so wonderfully supported in the creation of this presentation. So thank you to Mr. Koshi for his support.
Dr. Moore, thank you. That was a wonderful report.
Thank you.
John?
Yes.
I'll go first. Thank you very much. I have about 4 or 5 questions.
Okay.
Ones that can be answered, great. If not, we'll get to them when we get there. So excited to see that the AP numbers are still rising. We have more students participating. A few questions on that, which is, do we have any inkling why we are seeing our numbers rising the way they are? Are we using our new methods of identifying kids to get them in? Are advisors taking a new role? How are we identifying more students to take these classes? Is that something we're prepared to answer yet, or down the road?
I would need to make sure to go back to our sites to just get clarity, but I know that we have been very intentional in making sure that we are providing our students access and making sure that we are looking at are all the students who should be and who need to be considering taking these courses actually enrolling, right? Because so that's something that we are looking at to make sure that everyone is having access to the courses.
And I guess the reason I can speak to this is I was part of Samuel High governance when we started doing this, and some things that were put in place, I'm curious if they still are, which was there was identification of students. The other goal, this was 3 years ago, was to start using advisors more to help identify students as well. There was tutoring set up. They were bringing people in outside of the additional support for students who were in need to have those extra supports. There was also a process for students to drop a class where you would speak to an advisor, you would speak to a house principal. It wasn't just, hey, I want to drop this and fine, we can drop it. There was more of a conversation about it. So I guess, are those still in place as well, do you know?
Yes, those are still in place. And actually, I can also speak to something new that Samuel High actually implemented this summer. They implemented AP Boot Camp to really target students that would benefit from this additional support and the building of relationship between the teacher and the students. And then they did, once the school year started, they did their very best to make sure that those students were with the teacher that they had during the summer AP boot camp as much as possible, of course. And they've been able to monitor progress. And Dr. Shelton shared some preliminary data, and none of the students after this reporting period have requested to drop the class.
Great. So
they've all been finding success in the course. So I'm really excited to share that with you. So I'm glad that you asked that question, because this is something that we just talked about on Monday when I met with him.
What's important for us to know that, because we're talking about summer programs and ways to make them more effective. Are we seeing most of these kids signing up in 11th grade English as their intro to AP?
I will need to get back to you on that.
Lastly, on AP, are we still paying for tests? And I'm sure we are still paying for tests, but are families being made aware that the test is part of the class and the school will pay for that test if they need to?
Yes, we are. And I know that one of the things that Dr. Shelton shared with me on Monday when I was meeting with him and we were discussing just what are some great successes and highlights. That's part of the conversation, making sure that students know that part of taking the AP class is taking the test, and that is going to be taken care of.
I know that's a big interest of Dr. Shelton's. And then the last question, Naviance in middle school. I know we're offering it. It'd be great if we could do a check-in of our middle school families to make sure that our families know we're offering it, and that it's not just being offered in this ether, that it's being taken advantage of, some survey or some way of just knowing that they're aware of it. Thanks so much.
Maybe I'll respond to that piece. We wanted to be strategic before we open it up to parents. I think we were going to, when the counselors come present, they'll show you the schedule. But there is a parent component, but I think they wanted to spend this first couple of months is really make sure they have a full understanding of it and all that, and then they'll bring the parents on board.
As long as there's a plan and we know what it is, we're all good with that. Thank you, Dr. Dratty.
Yeah.
Thank you, John. Maria, and then Ralph.
Hi. Well, I know I missed, but I kind of read over it, and it kind of falls into some some of the things that I kind of wanted to make my comment on it, and I think that's great that we follow, and some of our indicators, I know, John, you bring on APs and so forth. But for me, I've been at the college, and we've been going through a lot of professional development pieces, going to a lot of conferences, that as things come up, I send them over, and I forward them over to Dr. Mora, and now Dr. Devon, Dr. Devon
Smith, Dr. Smith.
so that they're aware. I mean, there's so many changes that are coming through the pipeline, and especially when we're talking about, college and career readiness, and especially for the career readiness piece. There's so much that the other side of the house, so much project-based learning, so much work-based learning, so much everything, whatever you want to call it, based learning. But those pieces, for me, those are really crucial pieces that at one point we have to kind of make that shift within our school district with parents, that the fact that their children are not going to four-year university straight off is nothing bad, because nowadays to get into the job market, which is where the future of California, that's what we're looking for. It's for the youth, for our students, for both of you that are here, to make sure that if you decide to go for four-year school, you're coming back and you can find employment after college, after 4 years. Many of our kids that were coming back and are still struggling trying to find jobs even after 4 years of college. So we have to kind of, in a sense, be more strategic and rethink it out as we move forward here at SMMUSD, I think. And that there's a lot of their viability. There's a lot more viability that's being put on the community colleges. Richard, especially at SMC, that's there. That's really, in a sense, sometimes more beneficial for a student at the high school level that really hasn't crystallized the focus of what they would want to do once they leave, our high schools. That perhaps a community college can do that, or Cal State can offer them a lot more than I think. If we're not even Cal State, I'll say community college, that they could offer there and they can start off. So I don't know how we can do it. Dr. Dradi and Dr. Moore, we're here with my colleagues now, and how can we bring up that conversation of what does, really when we start looking at education in the 21st century, in 2018, what does that really look like? And for us, we keep talking on this board, we still keep bringing up stuff that we did 15, 20 years ago. And I kind of want to say, okay, it's good, but how do we phase it in to modern times, to what is really going to be more relevant for our students once they leave as seniors, to be able to either go out and okay, four-year schools, Santa Monica College with a purpose, or actually going in and maybe as, like we're offering now at the high schools, dual enrollment pieces, that they'll be able to take college classes. They can just come during the summer and they actually get a certificate that will get them into a good paying, entry-level job. And then from there, going into the job force, figuring, oh, this is not what I want, I'm gonna go back, or I like this, how do I continue, make some money, and move up into the pipeline, come back and get your AA or BA, and at least you're more focused at that point when you're coming back to education. And sometimes, I don't know, sometimes we can do a disservice, I think. We still want to promote, of course, a great foundational piece. I don't know, and the question has come up in our discussions at the community college level, if A through G is going to be valid anymore, really. A through Gs, whether they're valid for 21st century learning. What does that mean of the retweaking of the A through G, maybe something a little bit different? But I think that part of it is we need to, within ourselves, and I didn't make it, but some of our staff went to this DreamWorks convention, a conference in San Francisco this last week. And they came back with, we're going to debrief, this coming week with our team. And it was fantastic. And they were telling me, and it was funny because as they were telling me how they're using data, it reminded me, like, we're doing that with lag and lead. That's what we're doing. Yeah. And they're bringing that up in San Francisco. That's what we're doing. So for me, it's like, okay, so we're doing something good, but how do we then be able to resonate at a broader sense in this community? Because we can't be doing that we've done it in the past. And I think the more we keep pushing our students to go through four-year colleges and pushing them to APs and pushing them whatever, I think we're going to continue to have that spread of the achievement gap just because of that. I think if we bring it up to 21st century learning and bring it up how we can bring in, a lot of the internships, a lot of the hands-on in the classroom, I think we've answered it. We're going to be able to reach a lot of more students that are not necessarily going to be Our kids that are going to go to four-year colleges, maybe they'll find something else. But the bottom line at the end of the day, we want them to get in eventually into the workforce here in California or wherever they may go in the United States. But, you know, predominantly the state of California is investing money. And it's the investment of the money of the collaborations between the K through 12s and community colleges. So I think we can be there in the forefront. There's some other stuff that is going to be unraveling, and hopefully we can connect up with between SMC and SMUSD. But this is my thing, is how do we bring the conversation so that we can talk about how do we move? I know we're going there.
Yeah, we're going.
But how do we bring in more, embrace more others about 21st century learning? Anyway.
Thank you, Maria. Ralph.
Hi, Ralph.
Hey, Jacqueline, thank you, and staff for continuing to have this focus and for bringing us the reports as we all agreed to. It's really important. I mean, I think we're all saying things in the way we all happen to look at it, and for me, that's about engagement. I believe that when the students are engaged in their own education, that they're going be successful. So, of real interest is in the slide there was areas of success and areas of need. And the third bullet of need, the students report not being cognitively engaged. So, and ask is, so, we have certain assessment tools like dropouts and graduation rates, things that we're already quite successful at. So are there other metrics of, let's say, engagement that we could look at that would help us understand that things that we're doing, like Maria's just talking about that we're a little, for some things we're maybe a little ahead of the game, that they're being successful in drawing students into understanding the opportunities that are there and engaging for their future. In other words, we don't want students to not be engaged in their academic pursuit and say, oh, I'm just going to get a job. I need to do this. I'll just get some skills and go get a job, because I don't think we would consider them that successful. If they're making a choice to enter the workforce because it can lead to certain things, that's very different than just taking a job and not pursuing education, for other reasons. So I think that's something we have to be careful about as we develop the CTE, that we're not just saying, here's a path to get a good job, and sort of turning off the switches about cognitive, enhancement. So that's, and then, so that's, the sort of one piece of it is what are the metrics, how do we know that our students are becoming cognitively engaged, taking more AP, sticking with the APs is, that may be a good measure right there. That would be one of some. The other is, as we're talking to parents, and we're talking about Naviance, and we're talking about, the potentiality of all students having, personal devices for their use for a couple of years. And we start, is to keep in mind the digital divide, because we talk, about where there's online registration, there's online this, there's online that, and for a certain percentage of our community, they don't have they either, at the one end, they don't even have access. At the other, they may have some access, but they don't have the devices, and they don't even have the skills. So, and maybe this is where there's some partnerships, even with the city, is to help families develop, the skills to use what's available for them to help that engagement as families, and then to help their students. Because if we're doing all this stuff, and that again, that it's great for 80%, but we're always talking about how are we engaging that group of students who just aren't where we would like them to be, and understanding what's the potential that they have and how to access that. So, and I think there's been in the paper, lastly, this week, results of the test statewide, and and there's some of the bemoaning the small increases in this. We know that this is a long-term effort, and that we shouldn't be discouraged by seeing some numbers that might go down, because we're looking at creating a different kind of environment with the understanding that hopefully in the longer term, there will be consistent change that we'll see. But if we say, well, and that was the problem before, you have to increase 2% in this and this every year, those are sort of false indicators of success. So, let's keep going doing what we're doing. Thank you.
No, thank you.
Thank you, Ralph.
If I may add, I think when we think about career in college and thinking about CTE and project-based learning, I really want us to consider that it doesn't have to be one or the other. It could be both, right? Our students can engage in A through G courses and still be able to experience a career learning pathway to explore what does it mean to be a scientist if I'm taking biology, right? Or if I'm taking AP Physics. What does it mean to be a physicist? How can I apply this in a real world scenario, right? And that brings up cultural relevancy. How does this connect to the real world? I think some of us had the opportunity to go visit different schools, and we were able to visit schools up in Clovis and Fresno, and CART comes to mind, where we had students that were taking different courses, right? And I remember speaking to a young man who was sharing with us that he had AP courses in the afternoon, but he spent his morning at CART to experience the CTE pathway, to really see how his courses applied to the real world. So he wasn't having to make a decision of one or the other. He was actually experiencing both and feeling that his experience in the morning at CART in this career pathway learning opportunity really reinforced his learning experience in the afternoon at his high school in those AP and A through G courses. So it doesn't have to be one or the other. I think we have an opportunity to make it both and to let our students know you will be prepared to choose. Am I ready to go to career for a year because I want to take a gap year, or do I want to go to a community college, or am I going to go to a four-year college? That you have those options, and what we want to give our students is options so that they can engage in dialogue with their families around what will be the next best step for them.
Thank you, Dr. Moore. Craig and then Lori?
Yeah, I just, for those watching at home and to read through ourselves, I love this presentation just like I love the last one you did. I think we're so on the right track here. And I want to bring us back to what we're doing, which is per the request of the board and in response to the Noguera report, we need to have consistency of program execution. We need to have clarity of focus. We need to monitor success and change things that aren't working and accelerate things that are. And these reports you're bringing us will happen at the same time each year, same report, new data, new line items. And for example, I want to highlight, you've got considerations for next steps. Next year, I imagine we will see many of these under promising staff practices, and we'll see some of the promising staff practices under areas of success. So the goal here is we're moving things from here's what we're doing right, here's what we're implementing, here's what we're thinking about, and we're moving through time adding to our practices. So I would say for people watching at home, the considerations for next steps is a very important place to watch for the future initiatives, the future successes, and where we think we're going to change the lives of the children under our care. And I think your format's brilliant. I think the brevity of the report's brilliant. I love that you've got the numbers at the end, the graphs that are available, but I am relieved in the way you presented. I'm thrilled with all this. So I just want to, again, thank you guys. This is exactly what I think we've talked about. This is exactly what Noguera would have us do. And I look forward to having this become a regular anticipated cycle. And I look forward to seeing those graphs more and more do the things that we want them to do, which we know they're going to do, not because we're crossing our fingers and hoping or we're really having enthusiastic board discussions, but because we're taking things from ideas to implementation to great execution, So this is wonderful. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Craig. Lori?
I don't want to repeat what's been said. I actually agree wholeheartedly with what Craig just said and what you, Dr. Morris, said right before that and Ralph before that. The only thing I want to ask, and I think I sort of alluded to this last time, is is there a way to share the kinds of things that, in fact, Craig just identified more widely? I know it's in a staff report, but if people don't go to our board packet, they're never going to know about the things we're doing, and we're going to end up with, what my fear is we end up at the end of the year, default mode, everybody looks at the scores and they says, we've only increased 1%, or here the bar's gotten this much bigger. And the story is in the things that Craig was just talking about, the practices that we're working on, that we hope to see next year move to the other side. But it doesn't have to be this format, and it doesn't have to be all of this, but I think if you could think about ways to share, and there are many ways, and I have no prescription for it, but that's what I'd like you to think about.
Maybe I'll just add something to that. This has been a big conversation at a district leadership team level, Dr. Mora and I. I think the keys are going to be in how we flush out those lead metrics. Let me just give you an example. For example, I just talked about Naviance. So we put Naviance as a strategy to do something. If we do Naviance, we think we're going to see better A through G access or better blank, blank, blank. I think part of that now is in our lead metrics. As we come up with lead metrics, we need to have a way to evaluate whether that is indeed the case. Yeah. So, for example, when the counselors come, one of the asks is, how do we know that this is working based on those goals? So that then come on our metrics to evaluate. So each strategy you see here should be evaluated, and I think this is where Mr. Goshi is going to come in. And a part of our work now is to sit down with him and really look at the year, look at the programs that we need to evaluate, and then put those in a place where we can actually look at it, to be able to tell that story.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, I don't mean to be pushing you to tell it prematurely either, because I think, to your point, before you tell a story, you want to know what it is and what we're really doing. So I appreciate your answer.
Thank you, Lori. Craig?
If I can, I think you've got a great conceptual framework for explaining to the public what we're doing. I love the idea that we have sort of promising, considerations for next steps is sort of over the horizon. Maybe you go the other way. Areas of success, things that we're doing that we think are meaningful, then things we are implementing now that we expect to change the needle soon, and then things we are thinking about to bring into being, right? So those three sort of sets of bullet points, followed by the graphs that you pulled to sort of represent where we are and where we've been, I think that's a great sort of 4-page, here's where we are in a very short period of time. And you can probably do it way better than that, but I think conceptually that framework is very, very powerful, because it shows kind of, we don't want people focused on this instant, and nor do we want to ourselves be focused in any given instant and not relate instant to the past to the future, So this creates that framework that we are here over time and we're improving over time. So, I think you've got and I totally agree with Lori, given the vast number of people here in the audience, we probably need to find a different way to get this out into the community. But at Palos Verdes Peninsula, they have a beautiful document that they put together that's really just the sum of all the departmental documents. And it's very different from ours, but I could see that we have sort of a regular, as part of our reporting cycle, a regular release that looks the same every year, but is obviously represents that snapshot in time. And our community gets used to hearing and seeing that as well.
Thank you, Grace. Ms. Afshar, Mr. Blaine?
Okay, so first of all, I think the report is very well laid out. It says, basically, it presents all the information very straightforward. Really like that. About what you said about the AP scores, how it's the kind of the passing percentage and how we're doing is getting better each year. I think a lot of that is related to how the teachers in the SMM-USD system at Sam High are becoming more accustomed to the test. Because I know at the beginning of the year, basically the teacher says, this is what's going to be on the AP test. I'm going to teach you everything you need to know, and if you take this information and you work on it and you practice it, you will be able to pass. And that's basically one of the things that's helped me so much, because everything we do in our classes, whether it's unit tests, quizzes, they're all related to the AP curriculum and what's going to be on the actual test. So that just being able to utilize that information, since we know what's going to be on the test, since the College Board releases previous year's tests online, so teachers have those resources accessible to them, and the fact that they're using them and giving us resources to practice with it. Like, for example, we last week for AP Language and Composition for 11th graders, we got a practice AP prompt from last year, and we had to write a baseline essay on it, and that would be kind of where we could see how we're doing and how well we have like mastered the AP concepts before even taking the class. So being able to use actual AP prompts to give us an idea of where we are in our success and our progress and towards passing or getting a 5, that has been super helpful. And the way that the teachers have used that, I think, is one of the reasons why our AP scores keep increasing. And then what you mentioned about the restorative justice, and Mr. Howard, I've met with Mr. Howard many times, because I'm part of this organization called Building Bridges, which is very similar to a lot of restorative justice practices. It's focused on social justice and a lot of similar things with trainings and everything like that. And we've done some things at SAMO, like specifically last year we had a Circle Up session, which was basically it consisted of many different types of students, but I think the students that most benefited were the ones who were at risk for suspension. And those students, instead of getting suspended or some sort of consequence, they were given the opportunity to come to an 8-hour session on a Saturday afternoon and learn about restorative justice, like participate in activities. And I think that's one of the most impactful things we can do, rather than giving students suspensions, having them just go home and just go and basically not work and not work to get better. I think giving students opportunities to kind of redeem themselves and not just get punished and then do it the same thing over again, repeat the same mistake because they're not learning from it. Giving students opportunities to do activities like Circle Up, restorative justice, in ways that they can get involved and figure out what's not going right with them, whether it's a situation at home, something they're not getting with their schoolwork, friends, something like that, whether like addressing that with the restorative justice counselor. I know that we only have one at SAMO, but I think that increasing the number of restorative justice counselors and how much we involve our students with restorative justice would be a big step. Because I think that especially in freshman seminar, which is a class that all freshmen have to take at SAMO, when I took it 2 years ago, there wasn't that much regarding restorative justice. We didn't really focus on it too much, and that's one of the things I'd really like to see improved. I'd like to see more restorative justice practices, maybe even a whole unit on restorative justice and how we can focus on social justice and educating our students. Okay. So yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Blaine. Ms. Afshar.
I agree. I really liked your presentation. It was very comprehensible. One thing that I did notice was like the speak of naviance, and I kind of noticed in my own education, my experience in high school, I don't have too much like familiarity with naviance. I only use it for community service, but other than that, I don't really know the use for it. I don't know, like I don't know the power that it holds. And I would really like to see a greater implementation if it's a good resource.
Thank you.
Thank you for that, man. It is. I am sad that you haven't had. Are you a senior or? Sophomore. Okay. So hopefully this year you're not gonna. But it is a powerful tool for students to be able to use and plan, and you can do all kinds of stuff with it. So hopefully it'll be different. Yeah. By the end of the year.
Isn't it great that we've got kids from the schools here to speak up and to give us that perspective? It's really helpful that you guys are here.
Absolutely.
Because when I bring it up, I'm not very credible, but when our Malibu board member brings it up, we believe her, so thank you for speaking.
Maria, and then back to Mr. Blaine.
Actually, I know that we're talking about naviance here, but at SAMO, I don't know if it's different at Malibu, but we have never been introduced to naviance and never been told anything. I've actually never logged onto the website. I really don't know what naviance is because no one has ever told us to use it. No one has ever told us how to use it. No one has ever told us what it is, and we've never been like kind of clued in on how it affects us. I've heard of it before. My counselor a few weeks ago mentioned to me maybe I should like start looking at it because it helps for like writing a letter of rec if they know all of your accomplishments. But no one, like, there's never been a presentation saying this is what Naviance is and this is how it will help you. And I think that, I mean, I don't know what's going on at Malibu, but at Sama that's never happened. So I think having something that explains, because I mean, it sounds like a great resource, but I just have no idea what it is. So I think letting the students know what it is would be helpful for us.
Okay, of course. And I know that our counselors and advisors are working on coming and presenting our plan of action. So I will definitely be sharing this feedback.
Awesome.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Mr. Blaine. Maria?
Just a clarification, we've had Naviance already for a few years, right?
Yeah, yes, we have.
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking, all of a sudden.
But now, oh, you might have come in late. Maria, we expanded into middle school.
No,
so
no,
we're
I know,
starting a
but
middle
even they're in high
program.
school,
Right,
junior and sophomores, I
right.
mean,
The-
come on.
Yeah, it's the brag sheet
So
for Planet
there's-
College
I
is when
know,
you're
I
gonna see
know,
it.
I know what it is, but most of our students, if they're leadership
Yeah.
and they're, that's kind of surprising to me, No, I'm sure they don't, yeah.
So
Well-
thank you for sharing
Yeah,
that with
yeah.
us, because then that way we can make sure that we
Right.
provide the support necessary so that it is being
So
utilized.
for me, that kind of leads into what I was going to say. We have, and then we're going through in great direction. And I don't want to come and keep saying it's Dr. Noguera's plan. It's our plan. It's not his plan. It's our plan. We've engaged it, and this is SMMUSD plan. So whoever, now Dr. Dry was taking the leadership with all the team leadership group here at the district. So we have to own it. I really don't want to keep saying that it's his plan, but we have to own it as our own. And part of it for me is I see the actual initial. I saw the data, but also in terms of what the areas of success and the areas of needs. And again, it reflects back what we were talking about, that the decline of people completing A through G's and the decline in groups of SED, Hispanic, African Americans lag behind the student groups of others. We're talking about students kind of engaging in progress through higher grade. All these individual pieces again lead to, and I just want to end it at that I think I heard from my colleagues today, and I don't know if you guys get it, to really understand that it's not, if you decide to go into, let's say, the technical field, it doesn't, and you're going through education, you still have to have a foundation strong enough to be able to engage in the level that an entry level, how can I say, field is going to want you to enter in. You can't just, if you're just somebody who's just passing math and English, they don't want something like that. You have to have that strong foundation. That's why I say, if we can use A through G, but if we can have something similar to that that's going to create that college-ready foundation that's also going to be used for, like you said, Dr. Mora, it's one and the same. It's one and the same. Career and college, it's the same readiness, whether you're going to be entering the workforce or whether you're going to be entering, a 2-year, 4-year college, it's still the same. But I think we have to kind of understand that, because we get so locked into kids that, are taking APs and the stress that goes with it, because you're looking at certain colleges, first of all, aren't going to take it unless you get a 4 or 5, and the percentage of those that get 4 and 5s is like, it's a small percentage. It's not a big percentage, but I know, like I went through it with my daughter who did that. And I know the teachers that were there that really honed them, because she was able to get 4s and 5s because of the teachers. And that's all they did was practice to the exam. And she was up to here when she left. She goes, Mom, don't ever do this to anymore, because it's not really fair. Not everybody, unless you're going to be a pre-med student, you're already looking into a professional school, then it's fine. But somebody else who doesn't really want to do this, you kind of do a disservice to them. So you have to find other alternatives where if the student is not completing A through G and they're falling behind, and how do we bolster them up so that if they don't, it doesn't really matter, because they might not be applying to a UC school anyways, and I don't know how much they're going to offer unless they're going to be, in research or whatever, or going to professional schools, that there has to be something, the alternative that I think we can offer, and what we're saying that we can offer them with, with project-based learning, that we can actually bring them in, and they'll have a lot of choices that way. And that's how I think that's the way we draw them in. We can't do the traditional education with them. The higher end kids will always make it because their families will always get them there. The top 25 will always get there. In the bottom, we have to work with the bottom, but the middle pack, I mean, we're talking about the middle pack of both of our high schools is a real critical, because you can either win them or lose them during that time. And I think this is where our idea of how we're moving forward with our educational pieces can really steer that whole middle piece to the higher end. If, you know, the way we're doing it, I think we'll do it well. But a lot of changes, and people have to be ready to say, okay, I have to change for the times. You know, and I think we have to be all ready. Maybe we have to go to some of these great conferences so we can see it in action. I think we should.
Thank you, Maria. Dr. Moore, Dr. Trotty, thank you so much. My comments are just very brief. I want to just underscore what my colleagues have said, and particularly something that Ralph said in drawing our attention to the areas that need improvement or areas of need, and all of us touched on that with regards to engagement. And I'm interested in seeing how we progress there a lot in tandem with the work that the superintendent's group is doing on project-based learning. And you know that, you know, we all have an interest in seeing how that comes together. I also want to say that your reports are wonderful in the sense of the way in which they're presented and the clarity. So I too really appreciate that, as does the board. Thank you very much, both of you. Friends, that now brings us to our communications, and Mr. Blaine, you'll be first on our agenda tonight with Santa Monica High School.
It's good. Okay, so this week is Sam High's homecoming week. So it's always hectic because we have the dance, carnival, rally, everything. So pretty much today was our homecoming carnival, and this is our second year we've done the carnival, where we have food trucks, game trucks, kind of like carnival type booths come on campus, grades sell food, we sell homecoming tickets, and our lunch is extended to like an hour and a half. So this is like a really big kind of just like fun thing we do. Yesterday, it was supposed to be yesterday, but due to kind of like some worries about rain and lightning, we had to postpone it to today. So we had it today, it went really well, and the students really liked it. And Dr. Shelton actually mentioned to me that he thought it went really well and he'd like us to have another one next semester. So we're gonna work on that and see what we can do with that. In addition to that, our homecoming football game is tomorrow night at SMC versus Hawthorne. And this is probably the game that the most students, besides the first game of the year, go to. Because our homecoming game, we have the homecoming court, where the homecoming king and queen are going to be elected. And then also, something that you all are involved in, the first annual homecoming parade at halftime, featuring all of you. And on the board, we're going to be honoring you. So I hope to see you all there tomorrow night. So, yeah, so pretty much we're just going to be honoring the mayor, Santa Monica, basically SMMUSD members, and we're having the grades walk. So it's going to be like kind of some people are going to be on golf carts, some people are going to be walking, but it's like you're going around the track and down the home stretch in front of the crowd. So it's going to be fun. And it's the first year we're really doing it and honoring our district. So I think it's a really good step to take to get recognition. Then our homecoming, like we've had a spirit week this whole week, and the theme has been in the stars, kind of like galaxy themed. So we have a rally tomorrow in the morning, and it's going to be all like space themed. It's actually going to be really fun because we're doing a blackout. So instead of having grades wear their typical class colors, everyone's going to be wearing black like the galaxy, and some seniors are probably going to end up wearing white like stars. I mean, it's gonna be fun. And then our homecoming dance is on Saturday night from 7 to 10 p.m. in the North Gym at SAMO. It's the first year we're doing it in the North Gym in a while, given that our innovation area is under construction, and that's where we usually have it. But it works perfectly with the theme because we're doing a glow-in-the-dark type thing with the galaxy whole thing. So it's going to be fun for that. Aside from homecoming week, the first meeting of our Samo High Student Site Council was on Tuesday, this October 2nd. And we talked a lot about similar stuff you guys talk about at the board meetings. First of all, we talked about how Samo High can work to increase our English and math scores on the state testing, and how those demographics that on the math scores and on the English scores relate to ACT and SAT and GPAs, because that's really important data that we can utilize and work with, because if students are getting low GPAs and they are testing poorly, there's probably a correlation between those two. And also we're talking about how certain test scores have raised due to practices teachers have taken. Like for example, on the English testing, teachers, a few years ago, they started teaching a lot of claims evidence writing, and I think they said the scores on the English section increased by 28%. So it was a huge increase from teaching this claims evidence writing, and I know I've been drilled claims evidence writing, And now whenever I get an essay, I can just go, okay, argument, or claim, back it up with some evidence, explanation, and then just do that for 3 body paragraphs and a conclusion. So I think having that is great, and just finding techniques that work. In addition to that, this is actually part of the WASC report from last semester, but there's one thing that we really want to address at Samo High, how students can get help from teachers, not during lunch or after school, because I know someone, like I have clubs during lunch, after school I have a sport, before school I have an AM period. If I'm struggling with something, I almost have no time to go to my teacher and get help. So Samo High and Shelton, we were talking about this, and the administration has kind of drafted this whole seminar period idea, where basically we adjust the schedule a little bit, but have like an hour-long block, 2 days a week, where students can specifically have time to go to teachers' classrooms. And I think that's a great idea. I think like kind of the logistics of it need to be discussed, but the idea of having extra time for students to be able to get help, I think it needs to be there, because I mean, especially students who are feeling like they don't understand what they're learning, they don't have enough time to get help from their teachers, especially if they have to go home after school because they might live far away, they have to get on a bus somewhere. And during lunch, those 35 minutes are not enough. And at the same time, you want to eat lunch and hang out with your friends. It's the only break you get in the day. Like, basically having 3-4 periods and then having to go to a teacher on something you don't understand and then going to another 2 periods and going home and doing homework, that sounds terrible. You need a break in between the day. So having that whole 1-hour block to kind of give students a time to go to their teachers, I think that's a great idea. And also we were talking about how teachers can focus on sort of this aspect of empathy and becoming more vulnerable to their students' needs. So for example, if a student isn't doing well, they can kind of look at the student and say, okay, is it because they're not understanding the material, or is it because something is going on in their life? And basically having the students work with, the teachers work with the students to figure out how they can address their needs and how they can help them. And that seminar period I think is going to be instrumental to that. And having teachers basically say, okay, what's going on? How can I help you? And how can we work together so you can succeed in this class? And in addition to all of that, we were talking about the restorative justice, and specifically the Circle Up sessions, and how we are going to have more of those this year, so we can have more students included, and even students who aren't facing suspension, students who just want to learn more about restorative justice, maybe get some community service hours. I think all of that will greatly increase the knowledge of our student body and the awareness of our student body, especially when we talk about issues like racial issues, social issues, gender issues, all that stuff. Students will be more aware, and they won't be as ignorant when they kind of just sometimes make claims of like, oh, this is this, because they'll actually have the training that can lead them to make educated decisions and claims. So yeah.
Thank you, Mr. Blaine. Ms. Afshar.
Okay, something to add on to that, which is really interesting. I didn't know Samo didn't have a support period, because Malibu has a support period, and it's very, very useful. We have an entire hour to go get help from our teachers, to review tests, to go over essays. But anyways, going on with what's happening in Malibu this week, we had our homecoming week, which was fabulous. ASB did a really good job, and there's a lot of school spirit. It was based on like different movies. So on Wednesdays we had like a Mean Girls theme. Everyone wore pink. It was a great time. Our homecoming week is also ending with the game on October 5th. Tomorrow we have the parade as well. We have golf carts. We have the whole thing. And to tie it up, we have a dance on October 6th at Casa Escobar. My sister. The MHS Choir is holding a cabaret for Carnegie, in which they're doing a silent auction and a concert to raise money for their trip to New York City. Also, something I didn't know, which was weird, is the PSAT is coming up on October 24th, which I was just made aware of a couple days ago. Also, on October 18th is the Great California Shakeout Drill, which I wasn't aware of, in schools. That could be useful information. And that's essentially everything that's going on at Malibu.
Thank you very much. Thank you, both of you. That now brings, there's no representative from Olympic High School tonight, and for our SMMC, I think I just put an extra M, SMMCTA update, we have with us tonight Danielle Laraski. Welcome.
Hello. First of all, we just want to say thank you. All of our members were super excited to get the open enrollment information with the benefits, especially those employees hired after 2014, in July 2014. They were very excited to see the reduction in cost for them. So thank you very much to the Board of Education, the district administration, as well as our SMMCTA president for all of your work together. I know it was a lot of hours, a lot of time, a lot of effort, a lot of strategies. So thank you very much for that. We're really appreciative of you guys working together and collaborating to, first of all, recognize the problem and then find a temporary solution, and we're hoping that that can move forward as a permanent solution as well. The PAC, the Political Action Committee of SMMCTA, met on October 30th with, Richard Vilder and Jeswin. Okay. Craig Foster, Lori Lieberman, and Oscar de la Torre. And our interview committee recommended support for all 4 candidates. That was confirmed by our rep assembly on September 24th, so good luck to all of you. The last thing I have is a little concern for, it's about the technology, the one-to-one tech rollout that's coming in 2019, 2020. There's definitely some apprehension that's been voiced from some of our members as far as some pedagogical concerns about the screen time, especially for some of those younger students. The fact of, using textbook versus reading textbooks and stuff on the screen as well has kind of been mentioned as a possible issue. Teachers also are really interested in knowing what kind of training that they would have before the rollout, not necessarily as it's rolled out, but beforehand. And the money budgeted for repairs, for replacements, and personnel just to keep everything up and running and keep them educated. So, thank you.
Thank you very much. Friends, and that brings us to our consent calendar. Are there any items that need to be pulled, or is there a motion?
Do I need to recuse myself from the item from my absence last week?
We might as well.
We've gone, yeah.
It's up to you.
Whichever item that is, let's see.
D4? It's 8D4, so we'll pull 8D4. Are there any other items to be pulled? Seeing none, is there a motion to approve consent minus 8D4, moved by Craig, seconded by John? This will be a roll call vote, advisory vote from our members from Malibu High and Santa Monica High School. Ms. Afshar. Mr. Blaine. Ms. Leon Vasquez.
Yes.
Mr. Mischer.
Yes.
Ms. Lieberman.
Yes.
Mr. Foster.
Yes.
Mr. King.
Yes.
I'm also yes. That's a unanimous vote, and advisory votes in the affirmative from our student board members. Now that'll bring us to 8D4, the item pulled that Mr. Mitcher is going to recuse himself from. Is there a motion to approve item 8D4, moved by John, seconded by Craig? This is also a roll call. Ms. Afshar?
Yes.
Mr. Blaine?
Yes.
Ms. Leon Vasquez?
Yes.
Mr. Mitcher?
Abstain.
Ms. Lieberman?
Yes.
Mr. Foster?
Yes.
Mr. King?
Yes.
I'm also yes. So that's 6 members voting yes, and 1 abstaining, and 2 affirmatives from our student board members. That now brings us to our major action items this evening, and item 10A is a public hearing and will require us to have a motion to open that hearing. Moved by Maria, seconded by John. This is a roll call vote to open the hearing. Ms. Afshar?
Yes.
Mr. Blaine?
Yes.
Ms. Leon Vasquez?
Yes.
Mr. Metcher? Yes. Ms. Lieberman?
Yes.
Mr. Foster?
Yes.
Mr. King?
Yes.
And I'm also a yes. And are there any persons wanting to address the board during the hearing, John?
There are none.
Great. Is there a motion to close the hearing? Moved by Maria to close the hearing, seconded by Lori. And this will be a roll call vote. Again, this is a vote to close the hearing. Ms. Ashar?
Yes.
Mr. Blaine?
Yes.
Ms. Leon Vasquez?
Yes.
Mr. Metcher?
Yes.
Ms. Lieberman?
Yes.
Mr. Foster?
Yes.
Mr. King?
Yes.
And I'm a yes. So we have open and closed. Thank you, my friend. So, Mr. King.
Be it resolved by the governing board of the Santa Monica Malibu Unified School District that all school leaders in the Santa Monica Malibu Unified School District be commended for the contributions they make to successful student achievement, and declare the week of October 8th through the 14th, 2018, Week of the School Administrator in the Santa Monica Malibu Unified School District.
Thank you, Mr. Keene. That was item 10B. We're on item 10A, which is also...
I would like you all to remember that, and we will be with it shortly.
And that is... so it's the resolution 18-11. That's okay.
Thank you very much. I read it slowly and I enunciated. However, therefore, it is resolved for the 2018-2019 school year, the Santa Monica Malibu Unified School District has provided each pupil with sufficient textbooks and instructional materials consistent with the cycles and content of the curriculum framework as specified in Education Code Section 60119.
Thank you. Is there a motion to approve the resolution? Moved by Craig, seconded by Ralph. This will be a roll call vote. Ms. Afshar?
Yes.
Mr. Blaine?
Yes.
Ms. Leon Vasquez?
Yes.
Mr. Metcher?
Yes.
Ms. Lieberman?
Yes.
Mr. Foster?
Yes.
Mr. Keene?
Yes.
I'm also a yes, and so that's a unanimous approval of that resolution. John, since you've read 10B...
It's so nice we have to say it twice.
Do we?
I don't know, do we?
No, I don't think so.
Great.
So is there a motion to approve Resolution 1812, Week of the School Administrator, moved by Lori, seconded by Maria? This is a roll call vote. Ms. Afshar?
Yes.
Mr. Blaine?
Yes.
Ms. Leon Vasquez?
Yes.
Mr. Metcher?
Yes.
Ms. Lieberman?
Yes.
Mr. Foster?
Yes.
Mr. Keene?
Yes.
I'm also yes. That is a unanimous adoption of Resolution 18-12. So you'll see that there are several items there as informational items for this evening, bringing back administrative regulations from our last board meeting. Are there any board member items this evening, or excuse me, board member comments this evening? See none. We will adjourn tonight's meeting, but before we do, I'm going to turn it over to Craig as he is going to lead the adjournment.
Tonight, we're adjourning in honor of Sky Coonerth, who passed away on August 30th at the age of 47, following a 16-year battle with brain cancer. She was diagnosed with terminal brain cancer while 7 months pregnant with their daughter, Ashlyn. After her first brain surgery in 2002, she was given a prognosis of 18 months. Defying all expectations, she lived and fully lived for more than 16 years, fighting her way back from 3 brain surgeries, 80 rounds of chemotherapy, 2 rounds of radiation, and countless hospital stays. She had a radiant smile, an infectious laugh, an indomitable spirit, and an undeniable and fierce love for her family and her enormous circle of friends. She was an active member of the Malibu community, served on the Malibu Labor Exchange, volunteering her time to many public education causes, including the PTA and AMPS. She's survived by her husband, Mark, of 18 years, and her daughter, Ashlyn, an 11th grader at Malibu High School.
Thank you, Craig. We stand adjourned.